So what I like to do recently is something like this. Basically, it's drawing nice and simple shapes. Shapes that are interesting or convenient to look at. But what does make shapes look convenient or interesting? There are a few simple concepts that help on this. The first thing I usually do is to decide for what kinds of shapes I want to use, and I am very limited with the shapes I use. Here I started with these edged, pointed kinds of shapes, and after that I added another kind of shape, these rounded, cloudy kinds of shapes. So I keep it very simple and decide only for a few shape families, as I like to call them. So that's the first step, deciding for some simple shapes and repeating them. So you see here, same kind of concept, two basic shapes here. First these square-like shapes, which are rounded, and then the other shapes, which is more pointed, more edgy, looking like kind of mountains. And I just repeat them and make them having some overlap and have them interact in some way. See here, same concept again, a limited palette of shapes, then some repetition and something on top which makes it more interesting to look at, a variety of scales. So I do not just repeat the shapes in the same manner, but I have a variety of scale in there. So this kind of shape, it's the same like this shape and this shape and this shape, but they are all in different sizes, which makes it more interesting to look at and even suggests something like perspective. Sometimes when I try to find nice shapes that complement the other shapes well, it helps to just turn the drawing. Then you may see something else in there and get some other ideas that you usually do not stumble over. So this one I like quite much. It has gotten a bit more complex than the other ones, but there is also the concept of limited shapes, repetition, overlap. And one thing which I also always try to do is to create some hierarchy of detail. So I do not want everywhere in the drawing the same density of detail. And here you see clearly in this region there are more details than, for example, over here. And this makes it more convenient to look at. So if you have a drawing where everywhere is the same density of detail, it's rather tiring to look at it. You do not know where you need to look, your glance does not wander over the drawing, and by having some spots with more details than in other spots, you force the viewer to look at these spots. Their view is drawn in, and this is one thing which makes the drawing more interesting. Usually this is called focal point, and often I try to create one or several focal points. You also see this in most of the other drawings here, like for example the first one, the focal point would be right over here. There are these different kinds of shapes meet, and there is the biggest variance of shapes. here, same story again. First bring some big shapes in, and in the end create some areas of higher interest by varying the amount of detail. And at this point, if you looked at these drawings, it may have happened that they reminded you of something, or you saw something in there, something concrete in one of them, or you had some associations with one of them. And just to give you an example, here there are these shapes that belong together, and this could be something like a wall. This could be viewing some part of a fortress. Like here some wall, here a tower, and in the background there could be some soft mountains, for example. And although this doesn't make sense everywhere, I mean here this would be some wall floating in the air, this actually does not harm so much. The viewer oftentimes still sees something in there. And I had none of this in mind when drawing it. I tried to put nice shapes down, and I used repetition and overlap. And this often is enough for the viewer to be able to see something in there. It only takes a few visual hints, and then the brain does the rest. Or, for example, another thing that I used is to bring down converging shapes. Like, for example, here. This kind of shape and this kind of shape, they point towards something. And this is similar to a linear perspective, and it gives some sense of perspective. At least often this is the case. And this is also a thing which tricks the viewer into seeing something in there. And as you see, I have a lot of these drawings. I have a lot more. And yeah, I always have the same kind of concept. Basic shapes, repeated, different scale, overlap, and this often, just creates something which is nice to look at. I do not like all of these in the same amount, but I like many of them, and it's trying and experiencing. Yeah, and one other thing which I also often do and which I haven't talked about much yet is to have some interaction of shapes going. The shapes, they are not hanging separately beneath each other or intersect in random points, but often they interact in some way. Like, for example, here there is this shape coming down here, and here it gets a point, and it seems that it interacts with the area here, that it has some effect on what is drawn here. Or here, these shapes, they kind of are wrapping around some point here. They all point towards it. This is also some kind of communication. Yeah, and these are things which make the drawings interesting, and these drawings are full of these kinds of interactions. I tried to place it in many spots, and this is something which I always try to do and which helps me to find nice shapes and nice compositions. And you see here are even more drawings of these. Just one last example here, this drawing. It basically consists of one kind of shape. Here these long wide shapes which suddenly have some concave tip. Basically this shape is like a paper that is bent by its own weight. Maybe I thought about something like this, I don't know. But that's the shape this drawing is made of. And there, again, there is communication ongoing. So here you see this shape which wraps around to the right. Then here another shape comes, and it seems like they are wrapping around each other or fighting around each other, or I don't know, something is happening here. And from here the movement of the drawing comes. So it's a movement which goes like this. So this is communication. Also down here there is communication. You see there is this contour right here, and then there is the shape right here. The upper one is a bit more smooth than the lower one, and they are just shifted a bit, and this, I don't know, could indicate something like something is falling apart or breaking apart or something like that. And this is also what I mean with communication and interaction between shapes. So yeah, you see there are 1,000 examples of communicating and interacting shapes, and basically all the time when I draw a new line, I think about how it would interact with other shapes and lines that are already there. And so, why would one do such drawings? Well, for one thing, it is a lot of fun, and I guess this already would be enough reason to do it. But there is a lot that you can learn from it as well. Painting, for instance, is bringing down shapes. You have to decide how you interpret the world in terms of shapes. And finding nicer shapes will make nicer paintings. Also, for your composition skills, drawing such abstract shape drawings helps a lot. It's like an abstract playground where you do not have to worry about whether what you are drawing looks like a tree or a nose, for instance. You just have to care about nice shapes and their interactions. And being able to find good abstract compositions usually helps you in finding good concrete compositions if you want to draw something concrete. If you try it on your own, remember these simple concepts. Few basic shapes, repetition, overlap. Maybe make sure that not everywhere there is the same amount of detail. Maybe you also can get some interaction between shapes going. And when in doubt, keep it more simple and more abstract. At least that's what I'm doing when I'm unhappy with a drawing. Then just take a step back and keep it more simple and more abstract. Now here in the end are some of my favorites. Thanks for watching.